Hello, everyone. This is Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist, and welcome to the Mad Science Lab podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're continuing on the My Thoughts series, and today we'll be breaking down the San Francisco 49ers with Dynasty Drew FF. Drew, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm glad we finally got everything situated.
I can see your chair's moving and your mouth is lining up here. It looks like you may have gotten the internet resolved. You want to take a second, though, to tell everyone where they can find your work?
Yeah, so I'm Dynasty Drew FF, like you said, and recently we've been working on, making some podcasts, but for the most part we're doing Jeopardy shows. We're trying to switch it up. A lot of content creators, it gets kind of stale. We got a lot of the same things, so I'm trying to switch it up. So if you're looking for new ideas, you can hit me up, like I said, at Dynasty Drew FF. And on Thursday this week we have Akash, and then JC, and then Dynasty Djins all competing in a Jeopardy show, and we're planning on doing that every week until the season starts, every Thursday around 7 or 8 o'clock. So maybe even one day we'll get you on the show, see how your trivia is. But
sounds good. I'm not bad at the trivia. I'm not bad. All right, though, let's get into the 49ers here. Let me bring them up. All right, we have the most confusing quarterback room I've ever seen. Highly drafted starter Trey Lance is injured, has lost his job to seemingly injured Brock Purdy, who then might not be ready for week one. So they decided to bring in washed up Sam Darnold. There's no real clue who the starter is going to be week one. It could be any of the three. What do you think of these three? Like, how does it shake out for you?
Like you said, it's really tough. So that's what makes it fun, because every person gets to, call their shot on whichever quarterback they want. I personally am not a Trey Lance believer. Do I think he's the most talented? Possibly, but I think Brock Purdy really showed up. But like you said, he got injured at the end of last year, so it's not even sure if he gets the job. But if I had to put my eggs in one basket, I'd go Brock Purdy to be the starter when he is healthy, which might not be week one. So we might see a Trey Lance trade, but if I had to pick, it would be Brock Purdy at this point in time. I just think the way he was able to take the team to the round before the Super Bowl was pretty spectacular. I know we only saw, one game, and then he got injured in the second game for Trey Lance, but if I had to pick, it'd be Brock Purdy. What about you?
I was thinking the same thing, but for one of my articles, I'm doing an ADP study on like kind of the gaps, or, there's variations from site to site, Sleeper, ESPN, blah, 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 whatever. And I noticed that on all of them, Trey Lance in redraft is going like anywhere between 60 and 100 picks before Brock Purdy, and I don't understand it. So clearly we're the only ones who believe that Brock Purdy's going to start, because everybody else is taking Trey Lance for the most part. So I think I'm going to have a lot of shares of Brock Purdy late and just hope that it's him who hits and he's healthy.
Yeah, I think I'd put Sam Darnold at 3 no matter what. I think Trey Lance is the one who might start the season. But like I said, I'm not a big believer in Trey Lance. He didn't really start at all in college either. They drafted him. He was really young coming out. So it might be one of those situations where he just never gets that chance. And we see that sometimes. But I think Brock Purdy isn't, going to blow you away. But he fits that Shanahan offense really well and does what he needs to do for the offense. And we saw what happened when he was hurt, because they had no other quarterback but McCaffrey in that NFC Championship game. But I still think that he's the guy that they're going to go to.
They don't need a quarterback to win the game, though. They just need someone to not lose the game, and I think Brock Purdy is more than capable of that. Moving on here, we've got the running back room's pretty interesting. We have Christian McCaffrey, who should be the bell cow if he's healthy. Excuse me. We also have a mix of Elijah Mitchell, Jordan Mason, and Tyrion Davis-Price. What are your thoughts on this group here?
I think that CMC, like you said, no doubt the bell cow, but he has had some injury concerns, not last year specifically, but the year before that and the year before that as well. He only played, 5 or 6 games. So I think having Elijah Mitchell would be nice if you have CMC, just in case of that injury. But another sleeper guy that did really well last year and a lot of people like as a sleeper is Jordan Mason. I think he did good with the touches he was given. And then Tyrion Davis Price is dead to me. I don't really have much stock in him. Well, what about you?
Yeah, TDP was someone I had a lot of last year when the only running back in front of him was Eli Mitchell. Then when McCaffrey showed up, Eli Mitchell got shifted down to the TDP role for me, and TDP is pretty much dead. I think Mitchell is going still a bit too high for essentially a backup. Jordan Mason's a decent injury plug, but really, this goes down to how long Christian McCaffrey stays healthy.
Yep.
And I don't think I have any shares of any of these guys. McCaffrey normally goes in an area where I just rather take a receiver. Mitchell goes a bit early for essentially an injury backup, and Jordan Mason, unless you're in a deep league, I think he's on waivers in most of my leagues. So I don't have many shares of anyone in this offense so far.
I'll say to backtrack to that. I guess I'm so into Dynasty. I got Dynasty in my brain, but Mason's only one of those guys that I'd stash in. You know how the 49ers are with injuries. He's one of those guys I just stash in Dynasty, and I wouldn't really be drafting in a underdog best ball league. And I agree with you though. CMC and Elijah Mitchell in redraft are both going way too high in the leagues that I've only drafted a couple so far, but I saw Elijah Mitchell go, and I was just like a little surprised at how high he went because people are just expecting an injury, I think, or even expecting him to have his own role. But Deebo Samuel's still there, who we'll get to, and he'll get some of his own running work.
That's actually, I was about to move on to the wide receiver room, and we have more people that are going consistently higher than I take. I don't think I maybe have a couple of shares of Brock Purdy and one or two of George Kittle. I don't think I have any Niners. We have a receiver room with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who I am normally the low man on, so I never get them. And then we have Ray McLeod, Juwan Jennings, and Danny Gray, who are all basically just waiver wire fodder. Like I said, the top two here are pretty obvious, but they are both going in a range where I just never end up with them. Like they go in a range where I'm normally drafting a wide receiver. They just never seem to be the wide receiver I take. Like there's always somebody. I'm never the highest person left when they go off the board. So what do you think of these guys?
I'll say, do you know any of the receivers in the range of Deebo Samuel? Do you have that on you? Or do you know any receivers you would be willing to take around that area over him, just so we can give some?
I prefer to. I'd even go Tyler Lockett. I don't even care.
Oh wow, okay. So you're way out on them.
Yeah, I'm not. I've never been a fan of either of them, really. I'm trying to bring up the ADP here, but they just always going.
I can get into it a little bit. Yeah, I think Ayuk is one of the most underrated route runners in the league. But when you're behind CMC, Deebo, you have Kittle there as well. It's just really hard for me to want a part of him.
Debo's going ahead of Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Hopkins, McLaurin, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Pittman, Christian Watson, Christian Kirk, Mike Williams, Drake London, Chris Godwin, and Tyler Lockett. And pretty much all 12 of those I would take over Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, I think most of those guys, other than I'm not high on DJ Moore and Calvin Ridley, I'm pretty out on. Those are about the only two guys that you listed. And Mike Williams might be another guy that I just wouldn't take above him. But yeah, most of those guys, you're right, I'm taking above Deebo Samuel. I think people are still holding on to the hope of his wide receiver 3 season 2 years ago, and I don't see that in the cards for him anymore, especially with CMC there. He's not getting as much of the running work. He had a lot of rushing touchdowns 2 years ago, which kind of helped get him into that territory. So I don't think the upside's there anymore, unlike some of those guys that you listed. So yeah, I'm also out on Deebo Samuel at cost, as well as like I was saying. Go ahead.
No, even with I was looking at the ADP for Ayuk, and he's going with a lot of the second-year receivers, Burks, Dotson, and a lot of the rookie ones, in Njigba, Addison, Quentin Johnson. So I'd rather have the first and second year receivers over Ayuk. I think I'm really low on this entire offense here.
I think it's because there's so many mouths to feed, and we don't know who the QB is going to be. So there's a lot of concerns at quarterback, who's going to feed these guys. And so I think the upside's capped for most of these players, other than CMC, in my opinion. So that's the biggest concern, because Brandon Ayuk, those guys you listed have such a higher upside than Brandon Ayuk. So I'd be taking those guys over Brandon Ayuk as well.
Yeah, and as far as the backups here, well, not even backups, the depth receivers, there's little to nothing. Like normally there's some wide receivers where I say, screw it, late in drafts or Scott Fishbowl, I'll take a chance, but I don't really want any of these three. It's pretty ugly. And then you have to consider, as we move on to the tight end room, maybe the reason it's so ugly is because pretty much the de facto number one is George Kittle, who's their number one tight end, backed up by Ross Dwelly and the rookie Cam Latu. George Kittle, like I said, aside from Purdy, who I get cheap, George Kittle is probably the only other Niner that I roster here. What do you think of these tight ends?
Yeah, I think Kittle's the only name to really consider for redraft specifically. And like you and me believe Brock Purdy to be the QB, that's one of those stacks I'd be willing to take because we saw how good George Kittle was with Brock Purdy. So if I believe that Brock Purdy is going to be the QB, I'd love to pair Brock Purdy late with George Kittle because we saw how good they were together in the few weeks they played together.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so based on where you think they're going to fall in ADP, who's someone on this team that you think you are likely to target often?
I think it is Purdy and Kittle, like you, because if I believe Purdy's the quarterback, then I'm willing to take Kittle. You know what tight end Kittle is being taken currently? Do you have that on you?
Because I'm on the wide receiver. One sec, I can flip over to tight end. Perfect. 1 sec, damn Fantasy Pros. He is going as tight end 4, Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson, Kittle, Pitts, Waller, Goddard, Engram, Freiermuth.
Yeah, see, and I think that's a good range for him to be in. I think that's where I'd be taking him. And if he falls to around his ADP, I like him at ADP. I'm not going to reach on Kittle, but if he falls to me a couple picks after ADP or even at ADP, I might take that shot and then get Purdy later in drafts, in case he is the quarterback for them next year.
And see, that's why I have a lot of shares of him. In a lot of the drafts I've done so far, he does seem to be the one that falls. The first 3 go off the board sky high, and as well Pitts when you're in Dynasty. But then there seems to be a lull. Once Kelsey, Andrews, and Hawkinson go off the board, it's a couple of round lull before you get into Kittle, and that's why I like him. He's kind of going into that second tier, and I just say, screw it. You know what? I'll take some Kittle.
Yeah, no, and I think the only reason I wouldn't, like, if I don't get one of Andrews or Kelsey, the only other guy later that I'm going to get a lot of is Waller. I really like Waller next year. But yeah. Kittle and Waller are the 2 second-tier tight ends that I'm really looking to get if I don't get Andrews and Kelsey. Like, I'm pretty out on Pitts next year, especially with them grabbing Bijan. And then Hawkinson, they got Addison. So I think Hawkinson can still be good, but I don't think his upside is as high as it was before. So.
Okay, and on the opposite side, based on where you think they're going to go, who's someone you're going to be out on this team?
Trey Lance. I'm not touching Trey Lance. I don't really see a reason to. I mean, Debo is one of those guys that I would like to get at least one share of in case he does find a way to, get back to form of 2 years ago and can stay healthy, which is a big concern with the whole team. So, but yeah, Trey Lance I'm just not really with like you said, because Purdy's going so much farther behind that I think I'd just rather take a shot on Purdy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was saying. Like, it's consistently 60 picks above Purdy. And I'd just rather, like I said, it's going to be Purdy and Kittle are the ones I'm going to target. And pretty much everyone else I'm going to be avoiding. I'd like McCaffrey, but he's always a top 3 pick. And I always just take whoever gets to me out of Jefferson and Chase. If he falls to me and I'm 3, maybe I don't think I've picked at 3 yet. That's why I don't have a share of him. But if I pick at 3 and the 2 receivers are gone, I'll probably take him. But I'm not a big running back in the first round guy with their history. So this screams to me of a team that I'm probably not going to have a whole lot of shares of.
Is McCaffrey still your RB1 for redraft next season?
He is right now, but it's kind of I don't have necessarily an RB1 as much of it as a tier. There's just a tier, and it depending on where I draft. I'm never trading up. If I'm at 3, sure, I'll take him, but I'm never going to try and trade up to get him. I'll just take whether it's him, Taylor, Bijan, Eckler. I'm going to take whoever falls to me. I'm not going to fight to move my way up because I think they're all pretty much the same.
Right. I think there's a big tier right there. I mean, like you said, JT is another guy I really like. Even Henry's going in the 3rd round in some leagues. So
yeah, exactly.
That's where if I can go wide receiver QB or wide receiver, and then go Henry as my RB1, I'm ecstatic. So I just think there's 4 or 5 guys in that tier with CMC that I don't really want to be the first one to take. I'm never the guy that wants to be the first one to take a guy in a tier if it's a solid sized tier.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of tight end quarterback early in the first 2 rounds. A lot of people are going to load up on the 3 tight ends and the 3 quarterbacks. So then, like you said, I might find myself taking some middle round or round 3 shots on a guy like Henry. There's Henry there and whoever else, all the aging ones. So
Yep.
this is a roster I'm not particularly fond of. They seem to all be overvalued because they are such a good team, but I think they're a better NFL team than they are a real team. So,
Right. And I mean, the only reason I could see this changing from now until the season is like the 1% chance that Ayuk gets moved, because you hear the rumors sometimes. Then it frees up a little more target share for each player. But unless that happens, then it's just everyone's going to be getting some, and it's not going to be enough for fantasy.
agree 100%. Well, thank you for, breaking down this mess of a roster. It's kind of all over the place with uncertainty. You want to take another chance here to tell everyone where they can find you?
Yeah, no, I Dynasty Drew FF will be doing different fun games throughout the off season, since there's not really much for us to do, which is really cool
Ain't
that you're
that the
doing all
truth?
this. Yeah, I would say you're finding different ways to do stuff, which I really like to see. But no, I'm gonna be hoping to grow my myself, and really looking forward to having you on my podcast at some point.
Yeah, anytime, man, anytime. Alrighty, everyone. That was my thoughts on the San Francisco 49ers with Dynasty Drew FF. Once again, I am Aaron St. Dennis, the FF Mad Scientist. Thank you to Drew for joining me, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Catch us again next time. Take care, everyone.